I always wondered what a broken heart actually felt like. Now I know it feels like standing in the rain outside a restaurant, watching your husband of 9 years kiss another woman through the window. It feels like your lungs collapsing while everyone around you breathes. Normally it feels like dying, but being forced to stay alive and smile that Wednesday night. I wasn't supposed to discover anything. I was just a tired financial analyst trying to survive another week. But life has a sick sense of humor, doesn't it? Working late again, babe, big client meeting? Don't wait up? That's what Daniel's text said. The same text he'd sent 3 times that month, the same meeting that apparently required his expensive cologne and the watch I'd given him for our anniversary. I believed him, until I didn't. Until Grace from accounting accidentally copied me on an email confirming his regular Thursday lunch meeting on a day he told me he was out of town. One lie unraveled everything. That's the thing about trust. It's a house of cards. Pull one out, and you start noticing all the others wobbling. I hired a private investigator the next day. Dramatic? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. Within a week, I had a name. Vanessa Carter, 33, marketing director at a competing firm. I had photos of dinners, park walks, and hotel visits. I even had audio, which I never listened to fully. Some wounds you choose not to inflict. That night, as I scrolled through the evidence, something caught my eye in one of the photos. Vanessa was opening a gift, a small blue box that looked painfully familiar. I zoomed in, my hands shaking. It was the Tiffany bracelet I'd found in Daniel's browser history last month, the one he'd convinced me was a surprise for our upcoming anniversary. I laughed until I cried, then I just cried. The investigator had also mentioned something about a big event planned for this Friday. Vanessa's birthday celebration at Le Jardin. That new French place downtown that had a 3-month waiting list. The place I'd been hinting about wanting to try. The place Daniel said was overpriced and pretentious. I was about to close my laptop when a notification popped up, a new email from the investigator with one additional detail. He'd uncovered Vanessa's parents' phone number, extracted from an emergency contact form at her gym. Thought this might be useful, he wrote. Most affairs thrive in secrecy. Secrecy? That word hung in my mind. I sat there staring at that number, something shifting inside me. The tears dried on my face. I felt a strange calm replace the storm that had been raging for weeks. It was like watching myself from above as I picked up my phone and dialed. Hello? Is this Mrs. Carter? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. You don't know me, but I need to talk to you about your daughter, Vanessa. That conversation changed everything. They didn't know about Daniel. They didn't know their daughter was involved with a married man. They'd been told Daniel was Vanessa's boss, recently divorced, and such a gentleman. Mrs. Carter actually thanked me for calling. They'd been wondering why Vanessa had been so secretive about this new relationship. We're flying in to surprise her for her birthday this Friday, Mrs. Carter said excitedly. She thinks we couldn't make it, but we've been planning this for months. Her brothers are coming too. I felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not pain, not quite anger, but something cold and calculating that I barely recognized in myself. What a coincidence, I heard myself say. I was planning to surprise them at dinner too. Vanessa's been such an important part of Daniel's life. Perhaps we could coordinate. As I hung up the phone, I caught my reflection in the bedroom mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were different, harder, focused. Daniel came home late that night, smelling of unfamiliar perfume and lies. He kissed my forehead and asked if I'd eaten dinner. Yes, I said, smiling. Actually, I've been making plans for Friday night. Something special. Friday, his face flickered with panic before settling into practiced concern. Honey, I have that business dinner. Remember? The Boston clients are in town. I told you last week. I nodded sympathetically. Of course. I forgot. Work is so important. He looked relieved as he headed for the shower, already pulling out his phone to text someone, probably her. Probably about how he'd successfully managed his inconvenient wife again. Little did he know Friday night would be special indeed, just not for the reasons he thought. The thing about betrayal is how it forces you to rewrite your entire history. Every memory becomes suspect. Every I love you, potentially fraudulent. The night Daniel proposed on the beach in Belize, Now I wondered if he'd rehearsed those words with someone else first. Our wedding day. I scanned old photos, looking for signs I'd missed, clues that should have warned me. I found them everywhere. The late nights that started 3 years ago. The business trips that left no paper trail. The sudden password changes on his phone because of work security protocols. The new clothes. The gym membership. The classic signs that every betrayed spouse somehow misses until it's too late. But the most painful revelation was realizing how Daniel had started subtly undermining me just as his affair began. Small comments about my career ambitions being a bit much, questions about whether my medication for anxiety was making me paranoid, suggestions that I was too sensitive when I noticed his distance. "You never used to be so needy," he'd say when I asked where he'd been. "This isn't attractive, Lauren." I'd actually apologized, worked harder to be less needy, went to therapy to address my insecurity issues, all while he was building a parallel life with Vanessa. Thursday night, the eve of the big confrontation, I couldn't sleep. I found myself doing something I'd promised I wouldn't, scrolling through Vanessa's social media accounts. I'd avoided this rabbit hole of self-torture until now, but suddenly I needed to understand my enemy. Her Instagram was a carefully curated showcase of success and adventure. Vacation photos and destinations Daniel had claimed were too expensive for us, designer clothes, motivational quotes about taking what you deserve and not settling. And there he was, in the background of several photos, carefully cropped but unmistakable to a wife of 9 years, his watch, his shoulder, the back of his head. I had given this man everything, my 20s, my fertility, my inheritance that funded his business when the banks wouldn't touch him, my unwavering support through his father's death and his career setbacks. And what had Vanessa given him? Excitement, youth, freedom from responsibility, the chance to pretend he was someone else. I found my wedding album and flipped through it mechanically. There we were, promising forever. Daniel's best man, Chris, standing beside him, Chris, who had stopped calling once the affair started. Had he known? Had everyone known except me? My phone pinged with a text from Mrs. Carter. "Flight landed. We're so excited for tomorrow." The restaurant confirmed our special request to be seated near her table. Her brothers can't wait to meet Daniel properly. I texted back a thumbs up and continued my archaeological dig through the ruins of my marriage. In my closet, I found the red dress I'd bought for our 5th anniversary, the one Daniel had said was trying too hard and not really my style. I tried it on. It fit perfectly, hugging curves that Daniel had stopped noticing years ago. I wore it to work the next day. My colleague Hannah whistled when I walked in. "Hot date tonight?" she asked. "You could say that," I replied, surprising myself with a genuine laugh. "I'm meeting my husband's girlfriend's family." Her jaw dropped. I explained everything while she listened in horrified fascination. "You're not seriously going through with this, are you?" she asked when I finished. "Watch me," I said. "At least let me come for moral support," she insisted. "I'll sit at the bar and be your getaway driver if things go south." I hugged her, grateful for the first authentic offer of support I'd had in months. Throughout the day, Daniel texted his usual excuses about working late and meeting clients. I responded with supportive messages, playing the role of unsuspecting wife one last time. At 5 p.m., I left work and went to the salon. If I was going to burn my life to the ground, I wanted to look spectacular doing it. Fresh highlights, a facial, nails the color of blood. The stylist asked what the occasion was. "I'm reclaiming my life tonight," I said simply. Back home, I found a jewelry box I hadn't opened in years. Inside was my grandmother's diamond pendant, something old, something valuable, something that predated Daniel. I put it on, then applied my makeup with surgical precision. Red lips, smoky eyes, war paint as I prepared to leave. I received a final text from Mrs. Carter. "We're all set. Vanessa's brothers, Eric and Matt, are taking an Uber straight from their hotel. We'll meet you at the restaurant at 7:45 for the 8 p.m. surprise." I texted back a confirmation, then called Hannah. "It's showtime," I said. The Uber ride to Le Jardin felt surreal. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Special night?" he asked. I met his eyes. "You have no idea." What most people don't realize about planning the perfect revenge is that it's not about acting on impulse. It's about patience, strategy, The willingness to sit in your pain long enough to transform it into something powerful. For 3 days after discovering Daniel's betrayal, I hadn't confronted him. Instead, I'd watched, collected, prepared. While coordinating with Vanessa's family, I'd been busy with other arrangements too. The first was financial. Daniel and I had joint accounts, but I'd maintained a separate savings account. My mother had insisted I keep it, just in case. Mother's intuition, perhaps. I transferred my entire salary from the past 3 months into that account. The second was legal, a discreet consultation with a divorce attorney. Ironically, one who had represented the wife of Daniel's former business partner in their divorce. She remembered Daniel well. Too well, apparently. He's a convincing liar, the lawyer had warned me. We'll need evidence. Evidence I had plenty. The night before the confrontation, I'd backed up every photo, text, and email the investigator had collected. Then I'd accessed our shared cloud storage, where I discovered a folder labeled Tax Docs 2018 that contained nothing tax-related at all. Instead, I found hundreds of photos and videos of Daniel and Vanessa together, dating back 3 years. He hadn't even bothered to hide them. Well, that's how confident he was in my oblivion. But the most damning evidence came from somewhere unexpected. 2 weeks earlier, suspecting something was wrong, I'd installed a home security system with cameras. For safety, I'd told Daniel. What it captured was him bringing Vanessa to our house while I was at a conference in New York. To our bedroom, the bed we'd shared for 9 years. That footage now sat in an encrypted file, ready if needed. I wasn't planning to use it tonight. Public humiliation was enough. But for the divorce, all options were on the table. As my Uber approached the restaurant, I texted Hannah. In position, she replied immediately. At the bar. Can see their table from here. They're already seated, looking cozy. You sure about this? I didn't respond. Of course I wasn't sure. This moment would change everything, not just my marriage, but how I saw myself. The careful, conflict-avoiding Lauren was about to become someone else entirely. The restaurant came into view, all gleaming windows and soft lighting. Through the glass, I could see the birthday decorations at a center table. A small crowd was gathering near the entrance. Vanessa's family, right on schedule. Her mother spotted me immediately, waving enthusiastically. You must be Lauren, she exclaimed, embracing me like an old friend. Thank you so much for helping coordinate this surprise. Vanessa will be so shocked to see us all here. If only she knew. Vanessa's father shook my hand firmly. Daniel speaks very highly of you as a colleague, he said. Says you're the backbone of the marketing department. I smiled thinly. Daniel says a lot of things. Her brothers were carbon copies of their father, tall, broad-shouldered men with protective energy radiating from them. They introduced themselves as Eric and Matt, explaining they hadn't seen their sister in months. She's been so busy with this new relationship, Eric said, frowning slightly, almost secretive about it. Well, I replied, secrets have a way of coming to light. The matter date approached, ready to implement the surprise. He'd been fully briefed that we were surprising a special birthday girl. What he didn't know was that we were also surprising her companion. Are we ready? He asked with professional enthusiasm. Vanessa's mother nodded excitedly. I felt strangely calm as we moved through the restaurant. Time seemed to slow down. I noticed everything. The candlelight, the murmur of conversations, the soft music. And then I saw them. They were seated at the best table in the house, heads bent close together. Daniel was holding her hand across the table, something he hadn't done with me in years. He was wearing the blue shirt I'd given him last Christmas. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hair falling exactly the way it did in all her perfect Instagram photos. I paused, my heart hammering against my ribs. For one wild moment, I considered walking out, choosing dignity over drama. Then Daniel leaned forward and kissed her. The gentle, reverent kind of kiss that used to be mine, and my hesitation evaporated. I tapped Vanessa's mother on the shoulder and whispered, "Let me go first." "I want to see Daniel's face when he sees me," I whispered. She nodded, delighted by what she thought was friendly coordination. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my red dress catching the light, my grandmother's diamond glinting at my throat. "Happy birthday, Vanessa," I said loudly, clearly. Daniel's head snapped up, our eyes locked in that single moment. His face cycled through confusion, shock, and bone-deep terror. Vanessa turned, frowning at the interruption, not yet recognizing me from the few times we'd crossed paths at company events. "I'm sorry," she started. "Do I?" "Lauren," Daniel croaked, half rising from his chair. "What are you? How did you?" "Surprise," I said softly, just as Vanessa's family moved forward into view behind me. "Mom? Dad?" Vanessa shrieked, her face draining of color. "What are you doing here?" And that's when the real show began. "Who's Lauren?" Vanessa's mother asked, looking between us, her excitement fading into confusion. "I'm Daniel's wife," I said, my voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby tables. "His wife of 9 years." The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa froze, champagne glass halfway to her lips. Daniel stood rigid, like a man facing a firing squad. "Wife?" Vanessa's father repeated, his jovial expression hardening. "Daniel, you told us you were divorced." "Recently divorced," Vanessa's mother corrected, her voice rising. "You said the papers were finalized last year." Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. I can explain," he started. But Vanessa's brother Eric stepped forward. "Explain what? How you've been lying to our sister? To her family?" His voice was dangerously controlled. "Vanessa, did you know he was married?" All eyes turned to her. This was the moment I'd both dreaded and anticipated, learning whether she was victim or accomplice. "Of course not," she insisted, but her eyes flicked to Daniel in a silent plea. "A tell, really?" I asked softly, pulling out my phone. "So you weren't in our home 2 weeks ago? In our bed while I was at a financial conference in New York?" Vanessa paled further. "You knew," I continued, my voice steady. "You've known for at least a year. The day you called our home phone and I answered, remember? You hung up, but not before asking for Daniel by name." Other diners were openly staring now. A waiter hovered uncertainly nearby. Hannah had moved closer, phone discreetly recording. "Is this true?" Vanessa's father demanded, his face flushing with anger. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "He said they were separated," she whispered. "That she knew, that it was just for appearances." "Appearances," I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. "Like the appearance of me working 60-hour weeks to support his business ventures? Or the appearance of me helping him through depression last year while he was apparently building a life with you?" Daniel finally found his voice. "Lauren, please. Not here." "Where then, Daniel? In our marriage counseling sessions where you claim to be rediscovering yourself? Or perhaps in our bedroom where you made love to me last week? Was that just to keep up appearances too?" Vanessa made a small wounded sound. "Last week. You said you hadn't touched her in months." "He lied," I said simply. "That's what he does, to both of us." Vanessa's brothers had moved to flank their sister protectively, both glaring at Daniel with undisguised disgust. "You brought him to Dad's retirement party," Matt said to Vanessa. "Introduced him to our entire family, our friends." "I didn't know," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. I reached into my purse and withdrew a small stack of photos, selected carefully from the investigator's files. 3 years, I said, sliding them across the table. "That's how long this has been going on. Here's you two at the Overlook Hotel last April. Here's the weekend trip to Nantucket you took while I was nursing my mother after her surgery. And here's last Christmas Eve when Daniel told me he was working late." Vanessa's mother picked up the photos, gasping as she flipped through them. "Vanessa Marie Carter," she whispered. "How could you?" "Mom, please. Don't mom me. We raised you better than this." She turned to me, deep shame in her eyes. "I am so sorry. I had no idea." Daniel tried to take control. "This is a private matter that doesn't need to involve." Vanessa's father interrupted. "You made it our business when you lied to my family, sat at my table, accepted our hospitality under false pretenses. And when you used company resources to fund your affair," I added calmly. "The Overlook Hotel receipts were charged to your business account, the account I helped you set up, the one where I'm still listed as CFO." Daniel blanched. This was news to him, that I'd been quietly monitoring the financial records for weeks. That's not fraud. It's not misappropriation of company funds." "Yes, it is. Your investors might be interested to know how their money is being spent." A small crowd had gathered now. Whispers rippled through the restaurant. Someone was definitely filming. "You're making a scene," Daniel hissed desperately. "No, you made the scene," Eric said, stepping closer to Daniel. "For 3 years, apparently." A part of me felt cracked open, raw and exposed, but also stronger than I'd ever been. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning I'd needed more than I could admit. "I'd like you to leave," Vanessa said suddenly, not looking at either of us. "Both of you." "Please, sweetheart," her mother began, but Vanessa cut her off. "I can't do this. Here. Not now." I felt a strange pang of sympathy for her, despite everything. We were both victims of the same man's selfishness. "I'll go," I said quietly. But first, I turned to Daniel, who was frantically texting someone under the table. I reached over and plucked the phone from his hands. "Your lawyer can wait," I said, glancing at the screen. "If mine has already filed the paperwork, you'll be served on Monday." Daniel's face contorted. "You vindictive, you planned all this." The slur hung in the air, revealing his true character for anyone who still doubted. "No, Daniel. You planned this the first time you decided to lie. I'm just providing the inevitable conclusion." I turned to Vanessa's family. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But if it helps, he was lying to me about you as much as he was lying to you about me." Vanessa's father nodded grimly. "Thank you for your courage, young lady. We'll handle things from here." As if on cue, Hannah appeared at my side. "Car's waiting," she murmured. I took one last look at the tableau. Daniel cornered, Vanessa crumbling, her family forming a protective circle that excluded them both. The birthday cake waited untouched nearby, its candles unlit. "Happy birthday, Vanessa," I said again, this time without malice. "I hope your next year brings better choices." My hands were trembling, but not from fear anymore, from the strange release that comes when you finally stop pretending. As Hannah and I walked away, I heard Vanessa's father begin. "As for you, Daniel, we need to have a serious conversation about your business practices." Outside, the night air hit my face like freedom. Hannah squeezed my arm. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." I felt emptied out and filled with something new all at once. My phone buzzed with notifications. The restaurant confrontation was already trending locally on social media. Birthday surprise and cheater exposed were gaining traction. I turned off my phone. The public validation could wait. Tonight had never been about going viral. It was about truth, consequences, and most importantly, about me finally standing in my power after years of diminishment. The car pulled away from the curb, just as I saw Daniel burst from the restaurant, red-faced and desperate. He spotted me and ran a few steps after the car, shouting something I couldn't hear. I didn't look back. To ceiling windows and no trace of my past life. The first night alone, I cried until my throat hurt. The second night, I slept better than I had in years. Vanessa reached out surprisingly, about a month after everything happened. We met at a quiet coffee shop far from our usual haunts. "I knew," she admitted immediately. "Not at first, but eventually. He was always going to leave you next month. There was always some reason to wait." "There always is," I replied. She looked different, smaller somehow, less glossy. "My family hasn't forgiven me. My brothers barely speak to me." I felt no satisfaction in her pain, but I couldn't deny a dull ache at how many lives had been shattered for his vanity. "They will. Eventually." "Why did you do it that way?" she asked. "You could have just confronted him privately." I considered the question. I spent years being gaslighted, made to doubt myself. I needed witnesses, and honestly, I thought you deserved to know who you were really with. She nodded slowly. "The videos of that night, they're still out there. My company's social media manager says they'll probably never completely disappear." "I know, I'm sorry about that part." "Don't be," she said, suddenly a flash of her old confidence returning. "It was humiliating, but necessary. And for what it's worth, he was doing the same thing to me he did to you, making me feel insecure. Questioning my memory, controlling the narrative." We parted with an awkward handshake that turned into a brief hug, united briefly by our shared experience of the same manipulator. As I watched her walk away, I felt something like pity, but also a fragile hope that we'd both find a way to heal. Daniel tried contacting me several times after the divorce, first with rage, then manipulation, finally with tearful apologies and promises of change. I maintained my silence. Some endings don't need further dialogue, from Gossip, my therapist who had guided me through grief without rushing the process. My mother, who had flown in monthly just to sit with me in silence when words failed. Late in the evening, as conversation and laughter flowed around me, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "You were right about everything. I'm getting help now. Not asking for forgiveness, just wanted you to know." I showed it to Hannah, who waited for my reaction. "Good for him," I said finally, putting the phone away without responding. "And good for whoever loves him next." "You're not even a little curious?" she asked. "About Daniel?" "No," I said, and I meant it. My investigative days were over. The truth was, I had stopped thinking about Daniel weeks ago. The anger that had sustained me through the divorce had finally burned itself out, leaving something unexpected in its wake. Peace, not happiness, not yet, but a quiet certainty that I would find it again later. That night, I stood on my apartment balcony watching the city lights. My grandmother's diamond pendant, the one I'd worn that night at the restaurant, caught the moonlight. I touched it reflexively, a reminder of the woman who had survived her own heartbreaks and emerged stronger. People often ask if I regret the public confrontation, if I wish I'd handled things with more dignity. They're missing the point. Dignity was never in the explosion. It was in what came after, in rebuilding myself, without apology, in refusing to make myself smaller to accommodate someone else's lies. Sometimes I think about that woman I glimpsed in the mirror the night before. Everything changed. The one with hard, focused eyes I barely recognized. She saved me. She wasn't born from hatred, but from self-respect too long suppressed. I don't need revenge anymore, but I'll never forget what it taught me. That beneath my capacity for love lies an equal capacity for justice. And that truth, no matter how delayed, eventually finds its way to the surface. Like water. Like breath. Like freedom. So the story is over, our wonderful friends. Are you still here at this hour? If you are, if you're truly reading these words right now, it probably means something in this story has touched a place in your heart you don't always show the world. And that matters. It matters because what we just walked through together wasn't really just about infidelity or betrayal. It was about finding the courage to reclaim yourself when someone has spent years convincing you that your reality doesn't matter. You know, there's a line from ethnocentrism that says, "We heal when we recognize the part of ourselves that never needed their approval in the first place." And maybe that's the truest thing here. No matter who has lied to you, or how many times you've been told you were too much or not enough, there is still a part of you that knows your worth. The part that doesn't need permission to stand up and say, "This ends here." If you're carrying pain right now, I hope you know that there is no timeline for healing. Some wounds take longer than others, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep coming back to yourself, again and again, until the noise of other people's expectations finally goes quiet. And if this story reminded you of your own strength, or showed you even a flicker of hope that life can be honest and free again, I hope you'll like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're proof that even when everything falls apart, you can rise. So here's to your own becoming, to the part of you that is still here, still fighting, still learning how to love yourself without apology. You are not alone. You never were.